Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Touchline Banter, the number one footy podcast on the internet and your favorite footy podcast on the internet. As always, I'm your host, Ruben Dario Chavez Jr., aka Ray Chavo, and with me, as always, my good friend and co-host, Cheyenne Karimi. Cheyenne, it's been a while. We recorded actually a double episode, which we're doing again today, and we were cooking, but the files got lost. The internet wasn't ready. It was going to break the internet, so our recording software deleted it before it could escape containment. But how you been? Are you doing good? You're an Eagles fan. We were just discussing the big Super Bowl win, so you can gloat a bit here on your public platform.
Thank you. Yes. One thing to touch on. Yes, as Ruben said, we did a double upload about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. Talked about the state of the Premier League. Real Madrid Champions League. It was great. We cooked it. It was unbiased analysis without any sort of favoritism or anything like that. And unfortunately, technology is great, but it also makes me laugh because we have like self-driving cars and cars that don't run on gas, and we land people on the moon and all this stuff. And yet, like, you can't get a simple podcast to record or something. Or for example, like at my work, give a story. Like the guy who runs the technology at our work, like he is basically like Batman. Like when you see him, you're like, oh damn, and then like you never see him again, like never. And this guy has the everything. Like obviously, I work at a restaurant, so we use like a system to punch in everything, and another system for handling the payments and all that. And he has everything like on wireless stuff and what do you call it, like mesh Wi-Fi and all that jazz. And like yet like something as simple as a printer, and we know this never fucking works. And it's like, and I'm so frustrated. And then one day we call him and we're like, yo, we can't get anything to print. And he's like, oh, the printer's on like a different Wi-Fi than the Wi-Fi for everything else. And I'm like, dude, why didn't you just wire it? Everybody knows hardwire is the way to go. So anyway, I went to Amazon and bought one of those old school, like fucking printer thick cable things. And I plug it in, I plug it to the Mac Mini. And then I'm like, guys, we can print now. And anyway, but yeah, that's technology. Great. We love it. Anyway, we had 2 great episodes, but these will be 2 better ones. And yes, as I am an Eagles fan, for those who wonder, I've been an Eagles fan since like Donovan McNabb days. So I've seen some shit. I've seen some poor Super Bowl performances. I've seen some pretty bad Eagles, but this was great. And going in, I thought the Eagles really had a great chance to win. Obviously with Mahomes and the Chiefs being there. We saw what happened 2 years ago. I firmly believe of the rhetoric that Jalen Hurts outplayed Mahomes in that Super Bowl. And I think like the defense just didn't show up. And like, for example, for our school, we wrote articles about the game, about that Super Bowl 2 years ago. And I mentioned to Ruben before we started this podcast right now, I thought if the Eagles defense got at least one stop, I think the game is totally different. And listen, that pass interference, it was pass interference. I'm not disputing it, but it was soft. So if it's not for a soft call, in my opinion, the Eagles don't get it. And credit to the Eagles offensive line, like buy them whatever the fuck they want. We didn't blitz once. We cooked them.
Yeah.
And I love Mahomes. I respect talent, but I'm a little tired of this GOAT debate going on, especially so early. So I think maybe we just cool it for a little bit and then we come back to it when Mahomes wins.
I think people get a little bit reactionary upset about that because, like, if you ask me, like, I think Patrick Mahomes is the best player to ever play the quarterback position, just based on talent.
Like talent, I agree with that.
Is he the greatest of all time? It's hard to say. If he had won this, I think you would have been able to have a better argument. Now that he didn't, it's like, okay, you got to up the ring tally. But say la vie. I was just hoping for a better game, honestly, because the last one was such a classic. This one, like, by midway through the third quarter, I told my dad, like, if you want to switch it to something else, we ended up watching the whole thing. But it was like, this is grim. Like, it's just.
I was at my friend's house, and then he's just like a Raptors and basketball fan, and he was like, basically, like, he posted on his story, he was like, yo, go sports. Like, I have no idea what the hell is going on. But at one point, because we were talking about this before, there's 2 points for me. When Hopkins drops the pass, and Jones is like crying on the sideline, that one I was like, damn, I think it's over. And then at one point in the second half, I just see the huddle for the Eagles like offense just like do their thing, and they just walk over and they look so demoralized. I'm like, yeah, it's done. Like they're cooked.
Yeah,
great win, Jalen Hurts. Let's go.
The guy. He honestly, like, maybe this isn't. this is a bit inflammatory. I don't know what's going on in the Eagles fan pages and subreddits or whatever. I think Jalen Hurts has now basically solidified himself as the best quarterback the Philadelphia Eagles have ever had.
Yeah, like absolutely.
He's the first Eagles QB to go to 2 Super Bowls, which I think is already a statement of itself. He's won one, which obviously only him and Foles have done. And like, I remember the Donovan McNabb years. McNabb was really good, but McNabb, honestly, to put a modern comparison to it, he had a lot of Dak Prescott about him. Like, just left you wanting a lot, it felt like.
Yeah.
And Nick Foles, for all of that magical brilliance that one run, was not like a consistently great QB. Carson Wentz, kind of the same thing. The Michael Vick part, like he was really explosive and fun, but they obviously never had the success that kind of matched it. And then Randall Cunningham, which is before my time. I know Randall Cunningham's a really great player, and if someone wanted to say like talent wise he's better than Hurts, like I could buy that, but Hurts has the accolades. So Jalen Hurts, Philadelphia sports legend, etch him onto the Mount Rushmore already.
I mean, another thing we got to touch on just quickly. I mean, I know we're it's footy podcast, but Lakers hat for Ruben.
Yeah. Well, we did this. We did this in the last video, but it lost. Yeah, it's awesome. I'm very happy. The Luka Doncic trade.
Wow.
I mean, look, as a Real Madrid fan, and like to give people a little teaser, like this episode that we're doing right now is going to be state of the Premier League, touch on some of the storylines that even weren't around when we recorded the last one, like some movements and stuff and some recent results. But there's also going to be another episode, which is Real Madrid and Champions League focused. Real Madrid just keep winning. And as a Lakers and Real Madrid fan, particularly, I keep winning because not only is Luka Doncic, Real Madrid legend, a Laker now, but now he's going to be cheering with me for Real Madrid, and he's going to be helping me cheer for the Lakers. Yeah, he's a player that I really loved. It's different. And I think, like, not to get high level concept, whenever you do this as a job, and obviously we're not being paid for this yet, and we're just trying to grow, but we now have to try to be as unbiased as possible. Obviously we have a little more more fun with it all. We allow ourselves to have opinions and still get fired up, but you try to kind of be a little bit more objective. And the older that you get, you just naturally lose some of that kid, like, oh, like my favorite team, and like everybody who plays for my team is the best, and I just love them implicitly. But it says something to me that, like, and this is why I think Dallas fans are so hurt, and why I think anybody arguing that even if the Mavs got better in the short term, which I don't agree with, but if you believe that, why that's kind of a dumb argument is because, like, Luka isn't just a player that you like having on your team because he's a good player. He's the kind of player that makes you love the sport and want to watch it. Like, it is a different kind of player. Like, when the trade happened, I was a Luka fan already. Like, I was so sad, and I would say to everybody, like, I want him on the Lakers, but I know it's never going to happen because why would the Mavericks just not pay him whatever he wanted forever? Apparently because they think he's fat. Which, like, same, Luka. We can do off-season training together if you want. But
bro, even then, that is so wild.
It's crazy. It's crazy
because like I am huge on Luka. Like, I love Luka, that dog in him nastiness. Like last year when in the playoff, when he hits the game winner over Gobert and just like barking at him in his face. And like for me, he's like top 3. Like I'm very high on Shea, even though he hasn't really done in the playoffs. But I think like it's like him, Jokic, Luka. Yeah. And to me, like, Luka's just got the biggest like dog in him in terms of like a killer. But like to me, like, bro, like, I get it. He's a little overweight, this, that, bro. It's a franchise. He's a global superstar, man. Speaks Spanish. He's from, where's he from? In the Lithuania? Or
he's from Slovenia.
Slovenia, yeah. Like, bro, everywhere in the world loves like Nico Harrison just resign.
Crazy.
Sit down. It's over.
To put the bow on it, like, I've been a fan since he got into the league because of the Real Madrid connection and the way he plays. And when I heard that my favorite player in the league was getting traded to my favorite team, I felt like a kid again. Like, I could not go to bed. Like, I stayed up all night just reading every article, every little detail about the trade. Partly because I was like, I can't believe it's real. And also because you're just excited. I'm happy to see him play for my team. Like, even in his first game, again, we're not a basketball podcast. We will get to the footy after this.
We promise.
But even in the first game, when he's like passing a full court to LeBron James. He's doing the Luka passes that only he can do, where he sees somebody in the corner, the little skip passes, the vision, and he looks like he's a bit slower because he hasn't played since Christmas, and obviously he needs to get back into game shape. He still looked great. He still looked like one of the best players on the planet. I'm just like, this guy plays for us now. It's crazy. Yeah, so I'm very happy. It's been a lot easier for me to wear the Lakers gear now that I have my favorite player on my team again, because now I'm like, win or lose. And that's the magic that a player like that can give you when you really love someone. It's like win or lose. Like, I just want to see my guy go out there and ball. Like, I think we got a chance in every game. And that's how I always felt
100%.
when we had Kobe. Like, Kobe was that for me. Like, even in the bad years, even in the Robert Sacre years, even in the Smush Parker years, I'm like, I'm tuning in because Kobe might just drop 50. Like, and that gives us a chance. And that's how I feel about Luka. Crazy that the Mavs front office felt differently, but what can you do?
That's wild.
Okay, but we'll finally get on to the football, the actual football, the one that's played globally. While the Eagles are champions, people might push back on them calling themselves world champs because they're not playing. Can they do it on a cold and wet, rainy day in Stoke? Who knows? But we're going to touch on the Premier League. We'll look at the table and kind of jump off from there. Liverpool still ahead. They actually play their game in hand later today. It is against Everton. It's the last Merseyside derby that's going to take place in Everton's current stadium because they're getting a new one. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's going to be a big deal for both sides. Obviously, this is David Moyes' Everton. We're not going to dig too deep into the game because by the time this comes out, it'll be done and dusted. But we wanted to talk about some other stuff. Spurs and Man United. I guess let's go negative first. Those two teams are awful, and I'd want to talk about them together because they play this weekend in what can only be described as maybe like we had earlier when it was West Ham and Wolves, I think. But it was like the El Sacico or whatever. Like, someone might get fired after this, man. Like,
which is crazy to say with United with Amorim, but like, oh my god.
Like, and that's a little bit true. Like, it's a little bit tongue in cheek. I don't think Amorim will get fired, but
like, honestly, you never know.
It's pretty bad. And on the Spurs side of the ledger, because like, there's been a lot of articles, podcasts that I've listened to. Basically, everyone has an opinion on Ange and Spurs and Levy, and it again seemingly goes into these three things. You believe that Levy is not investing enough in the club, which is fair, and that they have not replaced the talent or gotten the talent commensurate with a team that says they want to be in the Champions League. Totally fair. The fans were promised that the new, they didn't spend money when Poch was there because they're like, we have to build this new stadium, state of the art. It's going to give more revenue, allow us to be a big club. They build the stadium. Poch leaves. They bring in managers like Antonio Conte, Jose Mourinho, seemingly signaling to everyone, we're ready to be a big club. We're going to spend big. They never really do. And it hasn't changed. So if you're a fan, that's frustrating, which is why I think a lot of fans have their anger towards Levy. But then on the Ange side, I understand there's injuries and how much of that he can be blamed for, it's unknown. But there's a lot of reporting, so much so that it makes it feel like not just smoke and mirrors, that the training practices that he runs are way too hard, that the players are pushing back against it, and it might be contributing to the amount of hamstring injuries that we're seeing. This means that obviously they're going to have to play more academy prospects, dig deeper in the bench, play players who maybe are not 100% fit. Like, they've raced back Madison a couple times or Van der Ven, only for them to get an injury like in the first game that they're back because it's clear they're not 100%. And then you get to like, he seemingly is not able to play a defensive style or change his tactics enough to not be so naive, even when they are winning games. It never feels like they can see them out comfortably. So the blame kind of goes all the way around. And like, the players, you can't blame them too much. Like, some of these are literal kids. It's like 17-year-olds that are being pulled out of high school. Like, come on, you gotta go play away in the FA Cup. Like, so I guess my question to you is like, because I see people say it both ways. Ange should be sacked. You should give Ange to the end of the season. Is there someone better out there? what would even be the point? But now, since we've last spoken, I mean, there's definitely no way that they're doing anything in the Premier League. They're not in a relegation battle per se, but they're in 14th, only 4 places above the drop zone and like 10 points above that. Is Leicester City going to make up the difference? You would not assume so. Still, the fact that you're only 10 points away from the drop is not something to be like proud of. They are now,
especially with all the money you spent. Yeah.
they fell out of the Carabao Cup. And by fell out, I mean they literally looked like they weren't even playing against Liverpool. Like they went in with a lead. And they looked so blunt. Like I watched that game with a Spurs friend of mine and a Liverpool friend of mine, and it was embarrassing, the product that Spurs truly had out there. And now they're out of the FA Cup as well, I believe, right? Yeah. They crashed out of the FA Cup. So it's just the Europa Cup. And like as Ange has been quick to tell us, he always wins the trophy in his second season. So does that mean the Europa League is going to White Hart Lane? Who knows? But yeah, Cheyenne, I'll kick it to you. You can take that however you want. If you want to answer the should Ange be fired or the who's more at fault or what sticks out to you from this Spurs team that is just like adrift.
Just they need to find themselves. They're gonna go on like a ayahuasca retreat.
Honestly, they need to call Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Oh my. Wow. Poor Jets fans. Like, yeah, holy. Tough. Oh my God.
Somewhere out there's a Jets and Spurs fan who's crying.
Yeah. Wow. Yo, help that guy. Like, reach out to your friend. Check on your friends. If they're like Spurs or Jets fans, like reach out. Like, or invite them to like brunch or something. Anyway, okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. Who's at fault? Let's say we know who Levy is. You as a manager, you know who Levy is. We know how he's been. He is a very frugal manager who doesn't spend, who plays like a budget team. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to count his money. I don't know exactly like if he can spend more or he should spend more given like what the stadium was going on. So I'm going to say that like Levy is the way he is, and maybe he should invest more, but he doesn't. He has invested a very decent amount into the new stadium and the new training ground and everything else there. With someone like Pochettino, you saw him manage that and deal with the lack of transfers or having to balance, getting in players on free or cheaps or loan and stuff like that. And the biggest difference with Pochettino for me, even though we had a system, was that the system would adjust and he would adjust his play to his opponent or based off the form of his squad or his injuries. The similar thing goes for Ruben Amorim as well, that it goes for Ange. You're too hard-headed. And they, like with someone like Pep, who we will talk about, especially given what happened in yesterday's game, even someone like Pep Guardiola, who we refer to as a bald fraud, has way more clout and way more in the bag to be, and especially given the way City's season has gone on, to like be so hard-headed and so narrow-minded and be like, I'm not changing my system. And even with him, we say you should. But for Ange, who's basically 1-0, who's come in leagues that basically you have to worry about like 2 other teams, probably just one. It's like, dude, come on. Like, I am firmly in the camp of giving managers time. I don't like the merry-go-round of sacking managers, especially in the middle of the season. You find a guy who's an interim, the interim stays for a bit. United fans, Solskjaer. It's just, it's not good. Like, let him finish the season, Realistically, at this point, like, even if you bring someone in, like, what are Spurs going to do? They're 27th. Like, for me, like, you sack a manager and bring him in if you see yourself viably getting into, like, a better position. Like, I don't see Newcastle, City, Chelsea, and any of the top 3 dropping off in a way for Tottenham, even if they sack a manager, their manager, and get a new person in to get into the top 6 spots. So just... honestly, like, let him ride him out. I realistically don't think they're going to get into relegation zone, but I think Ange is more to blame because you cannot be so hard-headed. You have to adjust, and especially, like you mentioned it, with the amount of injuries. I mean, I'm looking at the list, like Dragushin, Solanke, Romero, Madison, Van de Ven, Udogi, Vicario, Werner, Johnson, and just Richarlison now. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, my question to him is like, genuinely, what are you doing? I understand having a system, but at times, like, you have to change that, or at least like say to yourself, okay, listen, like I'm going to, like, you know, implement the system to an extent, or I'm going to do it with the defense, or I'm going to do it with this part of the game, or that, or whatever, or something like that. But yeah, like honestly, especially because like when we recorded the last two ones, like we were like they're in three competitions, and
Yeah,
damn, like
that it. How
oof,
quickly 2 weeks could go by. Yeah,
like I don't want to see it, and I'd like to get him to the end of the season. I have a feeling just because like the players are getting kind of edgy, and like you mentioned about the training, and it's kind of like where there's smoke, there's fire now. I think if they, when, to be honest, they get knocked out of the Europa Cup, I think he's done. Like, I think
you
that's it
think
for
it's the
him. I
Europa?
think they, yeah,
So the question is like, this weekend, do you think this result against Manchester United is going to sway it one way or the other? Because
I
United are a
think so.
bad team, and like
Yeah.
I don't think we see realistically United going into this game and like battering Spurs. But what if it happens?
I mean, this is Premier League, right? They're playing in, it's not Euro,
Yeah. No,
Europa
it's
League.
Premier
Yeah,
League. It's Premier
yeah.
League.
So like if they get battered, I think he still stays. I think like once they're out of the Europa Cup, I think that is probably the nail in the coffin, because then it's like, what are you really playing for? You have nothing to kind of like hide behind or whatever, or constantly push the rhetoric of like, we can win something, we can win something. Hey, I'm gonna win something. Um, but honestly, yeah, like if they do get battered, um, yeah, like it could happen. At the same time, like they could batter United the way United's been going.
Yeah,
Like,
we can attack the other side.
yeah,
Thoughts on United and Ruben Amorim?
uh, ugh, it's it's just a massive showing of like a top-down problem and how it like resonates over and over again. Because to me, it's like United has had Jose Mourinho, and as Real Madrid fans, we know how good Jose Mourinho is and can be. And I firmly believe, though, that Real Madrid kind of broke Jose Mourinho at the end, especially with the way the whole Bayern Munich uh, Premier League shootout went out and all that stuff. He kind of like lost his charisma a little bit, came out back a little nastier in press conferences, especially his like last two runs with Chelsea. But like what he did with United, he said it himself, was like one of the hardest, like his biggest achievements to
Yeah,
like
he
win a
has said.
treble or what. Yeah,
Oh God, I love
but
that.
but
I
it's like
love it
you
so much.
like for me with Amorim, it's the same. It's the same thing. It's like, dude, you came from a league that you have to worry about realistically, like maybe two, three teams. No disrespect to the Portuguese league, it's just the level of competition is so much different. And again, I realize building a system, but that takes time, right? Like even with Pep with City, you saw him like trying, like for example, inverted fullbacks with the god awful like Gail Clichy of all players, and at like 30 something years old. And then he was like, you know what, I can't do that right now. And then he stopped doing that, and they invested, and then he got the players he wanted. But it's like you look at their track record, losing to Crystal Palace, and then they won against Fulham, which it's Fulham, like for God's sakes, you better win that. And then they lost to Brighton, they lost to Southampton, they drew against Liverpool, they lost to Newcastle. It looks so bad. At the same time, I there's so much left over from the Ten Hag era. I realize so many of the players there are not his, and he's trying to invest, and he's trying to get his own squad in, and he's working with what he has. But again, it's the same thing, man. It's like, dude, read the room, look at your locker room, look at your starting 11, and just realize that you got to change, especially based off who you have. Start again this summer, right? Like get some transfers in, transfers out, and refresh there. I don't know. I don't think he gets sacked. I think between the two, it's probably Ange who's more likely. But
For sure.
oh, like this is going to be an interesting game to watch.
And for what it's worth, before we move on to some other stories, because I think there's some fun stuff to talk about. There's the two worst teams the two worst teams of the potential top six elite teams, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. United are still in the FA Cup, and with some shock results that maybe we'll touch on as we move through. Like Liverpool are no longer in it. Arsenal fell off a bit ago. So, like, of the top teams, it's Newcastle, it's City, who have been super inconsistent, Bournemouth, who are up near the top and could contend for a Champions League place, Forest, Villa, and United. Like, they do have a route, and like maybe Amorim will channel his inner Ten Hag and come away with an FA Cup win again. They are the holders. Like there is a path. There is a path in which they could win the FA Cup, and that will give him more breathing room and some credit in the bank because we saw what it did for Ten Hag, really. Although I would truly not pick them over Villa, Forest, Newcastle, or Bournemouth. City is a bit different. I think Manchester derbies can be unpredictable. We saw in the last one that it can be. I mean, like, and Emram kind of has Pep's number, so like that.
It's crazy to say, but
it is what it is. But yeah, in the Europa League, for what it's worth, before we move on, United finished the initial group phase in third place, and Tottenham right behind them in fourth. So again, both of these clubs should see this competition as like a real chance to win some hardware, because I'm looking at the teams and it's like their spend is definitely more than Athletic Club Bilbao, than Lazio, than Eintracht Frankfurt, than Lyon, Olympiacos, Rangers, Ajax, Sociedad, Galatasaray, Roma. Like, so some of those teams are good and have good players, but the money that goes into United and Tottenham and the theoretical level that they should be on, being in the Prem, should afford them a bit more room for error. But whatever. Anyways, let's talk about a more fun thing. Villa made a couple big signings, and there's actually a link to both of these teams because Marcus Rashford, former United academy boy and hero there for a bit, is on loan to Villa. And Villa also were the ones that knocked Tottenham out of the FA Cup. So that's the link to Tottenham. But yeah, they also brought in someone that we know very dearly, Marco Asensio.
Which I completely missed. And I was like, what? Like, when? And like, I saw a meme because that's how I found out about it. It's like when you're 5 seasons deep into like a career mode and then the CPU starts making crazy transfers. And I was like, what? Like, Asensio? When? But anyway, yeah, like, good for Villa. That's a great player they got.
Yeah, so both of them kind of made their debut. Well, they did make their. They didn't kind of. They did make their debut in the FA Cup. It was a very short cameo from both. I think they came on in like the 60th minute or so, if I remember correctly. They looked fun on the ball. Obviously, it's clear that Emery was probably just like, look, just like have some fun. It's Spurs. Fuck. They should have been up 5-1 by the time they came on. They were just missing chances. But yeah, do you like this move, I guess, for both of the players involved? Do you like it for Villa? As we know, the Villa itself is still in 3 competitions. It's still alive in the FA Cup. They're playing Cardiff on March 1st. In the Premier League, it's not going as well as it has been in recent years, but they're 4 points out of a potential Champions League spot if you think the 5th place will be there. And they're in 8th right now, which would probably guarantee them like a Europa League spot or a Europa Conference League at the very least. And they're still in the Champions League. And actually, they finished in the top 8, so they're not in this first little knockout round. They are definitely going to be in the next phase of play in the round of 16. Unsure who they're going to play because that will be dictated by the results of games that are currently happening and will happen next week. But yeah, so do you like it for the teams? Do you like it for the players? You can tackle either one. So what do you think?
Yeah, I'll start with Rashford. I saw like a video on Instagram and it's just like, the amount of people who don't know ball and just sports in general and like just yap. It's like they were like dude, like look at Rashford, like yo, like his hair is all like weird and like he looks like old and he looks like sad and like I don't know, it's a good fit, like Villa's not like the best. It's like, dude, like, do you not watch? Like, do you have no idea like what's going on in like the Premier League or like anything in the world? It's like, dude, Rashford looks like that because he's played under Ten Hag for like 3 seasons or whatever, and he's been in and out of the squad. And like it's been like yelled by the choir and by everybody in football that he needs to like leave. He's probably tired of sitting on United's bench, and no wonder he looks depressed. No wonder he looks like that. Like, I think it's a great fit. I mean, I think we've said it a bunch of times actually ourselves that Villa would be a good spot for him. They're a team that needs like more attacking options. Um, they're solid defensively. They're pretty solid in the midfield. It's just like their attack. You know, John Duran is obviously a great player who comes off the bench for them and scores world beaters. But you know, I think Rashford, this is a great place, especially under a coach like Emery, who I definitely think is someone who can get the best out of him. Like a fast player who, like, I think just finding his best position will be a little difficult, just because I don't even know what it is, to be honest. He's kind of like a left forward, not really a winger, not really a striker. He's one of those like kind of enigma players to me. But I think this is a really great move for him. I think he could flourish. So, like, yeah, to those people who are like, yeah, it's not great. Like, you should stay at United. Stay at United for what? Like to like rot on the bench for another like few months. Like, that's
Apparently.
great. And for Asensio, like, I think for both, it can be a great move. And for me, it's just the same thing with Asensio at Real Madrid. There's just flashes of absolute brilliance. And there are games when it's like who is this guy? And like, why is he on my team?
Yeah.
Asensio. I'm reading, just glancing over the article right now on the Premier League website. Vision and quality, what Asensio will add to Villa's attack. Oh, absolutely, he can. Absolutely.
Will he add it all the time?
Yeah, and sometimes he'll add no running back and one less person in midfield. I hope he does great. I hope he does great. Honestly, I loved Asensio when he played.
Same.
And played well.
Same.
And I didn't really like the fit at PSG, especially given the forwards. I think this is a great like fit for him, and I think he'll do really well.
He should have more opportunity to play, which is good. And I'm kind of with you. I think for Rashford, it's an opportunity. You know, you look at someone like Lingard, who was in a similar spot where it just didn't come off at United, and then he went to West Ham, and it was really fun. I do think, honestly, like if Rashford can hit a purple patch and hit his form and help them in the Champions League, where he has experience, like he was pretty integral in their win over PSG like a few years ago, I think in the round of 16 as well. And sorry, but they're not in the Champions. Oh no, yeah, Villa are in the Champions. See, I'm thinking he's still on United. My brain was like cooking there for a second. But yeah, so he can help Villa there. He has some experience. Asensio, for that matter, also has Champions League experience. And it sounds kind of goofy, but like the fact that this is Villa's first season in the Champions League, like a lot of these players have never played there. So to have two players, one in Asensio who has not only played in it, has won a couple. And yeah, he wasn't the protagonist of it all, but he was an important squad player, bench player, at times like starter. He can be like, look, this is how the atmosphere feels like. This is how you have to approach these games. You can't be overawed by the moment. Like Villa Park has to be a fortress. We have to lean into that. And when we're away at wherever we may be, we have to play like we belong, right? So I do agree. I worry for Asensio more than Rashford because obviously Rashford's played in the Prem, so he kind of knows the cut and the thrust of it. For Asensio, sometimes we've talked about it. He doesn't like to track back, whatever. Like the physical side of it, is he going to be fast enough for the Premier League? Is he going to be able to keep up with some of the physicality that exists there? We'll see. But I think the fact that he'll have some more chances to play will be good. And again, just come off the bench, make stuff happen, like be an impact sub. Asensio's always been good at that, really. Like his best, like it's like give him a 20 to 30 minute cameo, he'll cut inside and bang one in the top corner. Start him for 90 minutes, then you might reconsider your life decisions. But I am excited. I don't have much more to say. I mean, Villa did lose John Duran. I know you mentioned him.
I was just reading about that. Yeah,
he went to Saudi Arabia, which like I don't know,
64 mil. Like wow.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to.
Crazy.
I don't know if you want to have an opinion on that, or if you just want to. Okay,
they got Malin and Rashford and thing in. So
yeah, I also think like a lot of places are have already done this is good, this is bad, whatever. Like I'm not John Duran's accountant or his family member or him. And if he feels that he needs the money to secure himself for the rest of his life, far be it from me to tell someone who is trained and lived in pretty dire straits in Colombia that he shouldn't take more money than he thought he would ever see in his life. Like, doesn't seem to be my place, despite my own opinions on what his career could or should be. He's the one that has to do and want that. I can't want it for him, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think they've done some good business. And again, like, Villa obviously not in the run-in for the league. They're going to just try to do the best that they can to try to get a Champions League spot. But Emery's a cup competition guy as well. Like, if they focused on the FA Cup and on the Champions League, I don't think that's a horrible thing if you can secure yourself even like your Europa League next year. Like, just stay up as high as you can and try to win one of these cups. Hell, a good way to get into the Champions League spot, win the Champions League, try to do that. Like, honestly, but I do think they did some good business, and it'll be fun to see Asensio play. Before we move on to maybe another story in the Prem, for those wondering, under the new format, Villa will play the winner of Atalanta Dortmund or the winner of Sporting and Club Bruges. Those are the
Villa
teams.
Dortmund would be a sick game.
Yeah, would be fun. And Dortmund are up 3-0 in aggregate on Sporting. So, yeah.
Which you'd think they'd win, but like Dortmund,
you never know.
Wild.
You never know. And
modeling leads.
Atalanta is playing Club Bruges right now. They're tied at half. So it truly is all up in the air for who will have the honor of playing Villa or Leon, I think, are the other one. But we'll move on. We're already at 36 minutes. Obviously, I think we're anticipating these to be a bit longer. So what do you want to touch on Man City next? Because we like to rag on them, or would you like to do some positive stuff about Nottingham Forest? I think those are the two.
Let's do City,
let's talk shit.
We don't have to spend too much time because we're going to talk about them a lot in the next episode, given Champions League and banners and tifos that are being put out. City are in 5th, and City are bad. And they played against Arsenal, who Arsenal definitely, they're in 2nd, but they are not like... I think when you listen to most Arsenal fans and most videos and rhetorics that I hear coming out from them, they are definitely not where they thought they would be or wanted to be.
No.
To the point where I'm hearing a lot of them saying that their transfer window was terrible. Because Sterling is not doing any well, and they were we spent so much on Calafiori. Is he actually that good? And all this stuff going around. But City got absolutely thrashed by Arsenal 5-1. Wow. Lewis Skelly and Nwaneri and Thomas Partey were scoring to give you some backstory and how that game went.
Well, and that's the thing, right? The biggest thing that I hear Arsenal fans cry for is that they need a goal scorer, one that can do it consistently. And Saka being hurt has put that into hyper focus because he was basically the majority of their offense.
Yeah.
And now they don't have it. So the fact that they were still able to do that to Manchester City shows you where City are. We're going to get into it more in the Real Madrid thing about how I think this connects to their Champions League game. But sorry, you can continue. But it's crazy.
Yeah.
That game was...
Yeah, it was just the forward line for Arsenal was obviously the same of Kai Havertz and Gabriel Martinelli, but they had Trossard in there, which no disrespect to Trossard. I think if Trossard had the pace of Gabriel Martinelli, that would be a lethal player.
I love that we keep doing this because we did it a few weeks back. I did it. I was like, yeah, Amorim wishes he could fuse Højlund and Xerxes into one player.
Yeah, exactly.
Combine these guys.
Trossard is a versatile player, either wing, down the middle. He just has no pace at all, and he cannot beat anyone for his life. And Martinelli, I think if you saw the overrated 11, I definitely think he's very overrated. But yeah, they had Lewis Skelly playing. It was a lot of players. I mean, City signed Marmoush, and I think that's a good signing for them. They needed help in midfield. At the same time, when you look at their results, we know the whole Rodri rhetoric and what's going on with that, and again tifos and stuff. But look at when you look at the results, 5-1 to Arsenal. They beat Chelsea, which I was surprised. I actually thought they would
I was
lose to
surprised
that,
too.
given the
I was
form.
surprised too.
Chelsea didn't look good. Credit to City for finally showing up. They beat Ipswich. Wow. And they tied against Brentford. They beat West Ham. They beat Leicester. So they are getting on a bit of a run. I do remember this from the episodes we do record. I think people still and again, especially given the Real Madrid result, the whole glazing of City needs to relax, and like the articles coming out of champions are re-emerging, and is this the defending title holders are coming back. It's like, yo, chill. You're in fifth. Like, what the hell is going on?
The podcast that I listened to, the Football Ramble, I think it was the host actually. He said this, and I think it really clicked it for me in a different way. Like the English press when Pep Guardiola came over were slow to accept him and embrace him as a good coach. They slated him and they were like, he's not going to know how to do the prep. They basically thought the 4-4-2 and a big man and a little man was going to beat this inverted wing back woke nonsense. Turns out it was not. Yeah, Sam Allardyce was going to hold back the culture war. But turns out that wasn't true. And Pep's ideas did take hold. And credit where it's due. He has basically changed the way that football is played in the Premier League and in England in general. Like you see, like a player like Phil Foden does not exist without the changes in philosophy that have gone on at a grassroots levels in that country. Like it's just the truth. So credit where it's due there. But because they were so slow to accept him and then got egg on their face when he did good, then there's this shift that happens. And, you know, to bring it back to the beginning of the episode, you see it kind of with the Chiefs where we all did it and I say we all because I also have a football podcast of American football where the whole year I was basically like, and you saw it in mainstream media, people were like, well, the Chiefs will figure it out. Yeah, it hasn't looked pretty, but they'll figure it out. They'll keep winning. And then it gets to the last game or it gets to the crunch time or the wheels start to fall off. And then everyone tries to act like it's a surprise. Like, oh, we couldn't see this coming. And it's like, well, the signs were there. We just ignored them. And that's what I think people are doing now. Like people want City to be good because they're so used to City being good because it's easy to write articles and think pieces when it's just, oh, Pep Guardiola, champagne football, the best manager of all time. And when you have something that dispels that narrative or when you see the tides changing in real life, it's hard to kind of pivot back. Like it, you know, it's the Antonio Conte thing. People were like, they drilled him down when he was at Spurs. Is he washed? Is he done? Look at him now. Like he's gonna probably win Serie A. He's in a good spot to do so. So we're quick to call people dead and we're quick to call people alive, but then whatever your position is, it's hard to switch it. And that's what I think is happening now. People want Pep to be good, and they think if they just keep saying it, suddenly they're going to stop misplacing passes. But like, it's just not happening. Like, the Chelsea result was the one that I think gave people the most hope again. Like when they beat Chelsea, I heard it over again. I was like, people were like, oh, dangerous. They could be dangerous.
Yeah.
Chelsea's inconsistent too. Like,
yeah, Chelsea's still like Chelsea's that rebuilding team that is in like their second season and like they have like highs and like they're doing like a bit, they're punching above their weight, but like they come back to them down to the mean a lot or where they should be. Like that's where Chelsea is.
Chelsea is essentially what Newcastle was in 2022, 2023, where it's kind of a new thing that's taking hold. They get invigorated. Newcastle end up in a Champions League spot. And everyone's like, oh, the rebuild is on. And then it's like, no, because of PSR and stuff, they couldn't put all the money back in. We're coming back down to earth. Now Newcastle's kind of sitting again and looking like they're primed to maybe continue to climb up the ranks and become a Champions League team more consistently. But that's where Chelsea are as well.
Yeah,
I don't think they're Champions League level yet. They're definitely not Europa Conference League level. I'll say that. They're miles ahead of that. They would probably do well in the Europa League.
Yeah,
probably win that. But are they a team that I'm saying like, oh, next year for sure they're going to contend for the title? No, I think it's a process, and that will lead to results like happened against Manchester City.
Yeah, Just to wrap this up, I like there is the general rhetoric, especially with City fans, where they say like City comes into form in February, March, like toward the late end of the season. It's kind of looking like that. I know, like there's still the injury to Rodri and how he's going to be out for the season. I think that's like a big uh, hindrance to their team, and they're going to still have to adjust to that. But like we'll see. I mean, they're not winning it. They'll finish top four, top six, but like they're definitely not winning anything.
I just think I look at the fixtures that they have ahead, especially in the coming, like, let's call it a month.
Okay.
So they play Newcastle this weekend, which is not an easy game. I think that'll be difficult. They play Madrid next week. They play Liverpool. They play Spurs. Well, although Spurs performed pretty well against Manchester City historically.
Mm-hmm.
Then they play Plymouth Argyle, Nottingham Forest, Brighton, and Leicester. That takes them to April, basically. Like, yeah, I see them beating Plymouth Argyle. I see them probably beating Spurs. I see them beating Leicester. I would not pick them over Brighton.
Definitely not Liverpool.
Definitely not Liverpool. I wouldn't pick them over Madrid. You know, trying to put my own bias aside. I wouldn't pick them over Newcastle or Forest. And like Brighton's more of a coin flip. It's not like Brighton has been incredible this year by any means, but I just think like it's a tough run of games, and we'll see. Like, I do agree with you. They probably end up being top 5, top 4, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion by any means. I think that they're going to have to really dig deep. It will help them if they're out of more competitions and if really is just potentially the league and the FA Cup, knock on wood. But it's a lot. It's a lot. But
yeah.
Like
their last four is easy. You would expect them to win, like Fulham, Bournemouth, Southampton, and Wolves. But before that
Bournemouth game, depending on if Bournemouth can keep their form, because now, just for an updated look at the table, because I think we can wrap this up and then talk a bit about Forest, because I think we did that on the last episode, and I think that's a good place to end. But Liverpool, as we just said, they're playing their game in hand today. They are 6 points ahead of Arsenal. So if the result goes the way that most expect, they should win. If they do, they'll be 9 points ahead. So let's say, theoretically, they're on 59 points. Arsenal would be at 50. Forest would be at 47. Chelsea, 43. And then it's Manchester City and Newcastle tied at 41, which makes this weekend actually a very big game in any potential top 4 or 5 finish, because they're direct rivals for that. Bournemouth is right behind them at 40 points. I'm not saying Bournemouth is like nailed on to beat them, but Bournemouth's been pretty good this year. They've gotten some good results, and they have a shot at the Champions League. And if you're Bournemouth, you're going to do everything you possibly can to get there. Like, you're not going to just roll over. And for what it's worth, they beat Bournemouth at home Bournemouth beat City at home back in November.
Yeah.
So, it'll be tough at the Etihad. But
honestly, like when I look at the table, like I'm actually kind of wrong about that. Like Bournemouth has been doing well, and Fulham has been doing well. As like even though like they get beaten a lot recently, they're still at 9th. Like the only like quote unquote easy one is like Southampton, which like in the Premier League, like at the end of the season, like a bottom feeding team, like how they can be.
Yeah, again, like all this to say, it would be crazy to say, oh, they're going to lose every game in the run-in. Like, they're not going to beat Fulham. They're not going to beat Man City. They're not going to beat Bournemouth. But, like, even the games before that, Villa's a tough game for them. Wolves have looked better and could be a tough game for them. Palace is not a rollover team. A derby match, like, there's, like, a few games where you're like, yeah, simple, obvious. But then there are other games where, like, Everton, again, probably far enough from relegation to like not be too afraid of it. But if they are in a bit of a scrap, that game against City becomes really important. They're not going to like roll over. So it's tricky. But we'll see. I'm sure we'll have more words for City in the next episode. So we can leave it there. Yeah, let's talk about Nottingham Forest. I mean, we're
Wow.
now wow, we're now in February. It's the 12th, and Nottingham Forest is still third in the league. It's pretty unlikely that they're going to make a push for top of the table and winning the league. Although never say never.
Mm.
But it's been kind of a dream season, and yeah, what do you have to say about the tricky the tricky trees up in Nottingham?
Yeah, like maybe I think I said this in the episodes that we recorded before. Um, or it might be just like recently that I'm looking at, because it reminds me of when Leicester City were like at the top of the table and they won the Premier League, and like it was the constant rhetoric going around from like Gary Neville and Carragher and other people like Graham Souness was like, oh, like Leicester will drop off, and Tottenham or Chelsea was the thing. That was like kind of what I was thinking and going around saying they're inevitably going to drop off. Now I'm like, nope, yeah, no, like they're not winning it, uh definitely, like, quickly just say on Liverpool, like, they're winning the league. It's done. Over with. My opinion, game in hand, especially they win this game in hand, finished. Like,
Yeah,
don't even know.
if they win today, you might as well call it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If they don't, it's interesting, but even then, I'm still like,
I would still
but like,
pick them to win. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
but like just the way everyone else is going, like literally, I will say this: like if they don't win, I don't care where Arsenal sits. I think Forest is the biggest threat. Like literally, I think just based off form and squad and everything. Um, but yeah, just focusing on Forest, like just yeah, I firmly believe that they're just gonna finish in a top three, top two, possibly position. If you're a Tottenham fan, you're pulling your hair out because of what Nuno Espirito Santo is doing. Like I think it shows to him, just basically I think it shows Tottenham, like, you know what, a well-run club with, they don't have the biggest budget, but they find shrewd signings. Shout out to Chris Wood, Premier League legend, 17 goals, 2 assists, representing New Zealand at 30 or whatever years old he is, like 32 or something crazy. Um, 33. There you go. But yeah, like they have so many players who are just playing very well, and the squad is just cohesive, and it shows. Hudson Odoi didn't work at Chelsea, working well at Forest. Anthony Elanga didn't work at United, working well at Forest, and just other players that they've grown. Morgan Gibbs White has had a great season as well. Just they're solid. They're a solid team. They play well. You can see Espirito Santos' system in there. Um, yeah, like it's been a pleasant surprise, honestly, just to see like how they're fun to watch. I enjoy watching them play. It's like I will tune in to see a Forest game, and like I never thought I'd say that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's been fun. I'm happy for Nuno because again, and we're gonna see it happen with Ange whenever he does inevitably get sacked by Tottenham, which I do think it's either going to be in the middle of the season or it's going to be at the end of the year. But I unless he wins the Europa League, I don't see him retaining his job. Um, it can be damaging sometimes when you take the wrong job, and it seems more and more increasingly that Tottenham is the wrong job for a lot of managers. And so he's kind of rehabbed his image. Like Nuno now, like if Forest end up in the top four, he'll probably stay because they'll want to build on the project, hopefully invest a little with some of the Champions League place money, et cetera, et cetera. But even if they fell off and only landed in the Europa League, that's quite the achievement. And I'm sure a lot of other clubs will be like, maybe a club that has more money to spend and could give them more backing. Now, I'm not saying like that would happen right away because there really isn't an obvious club that you would think of. Like United just got Amorim. Um, I think you would have to hold him at gunpoint to make him go back to Tottenham. But like,
Calls them back. Hey, how about you want to come back?
yeah, but if next season does start off kind of slow for Arsenal, and it seems like Arteta isn't moving that along, or if Newcastle wanted to change, those are clubs that probably have more money to spend that his ideas could work at. So very happy for Nuno. It's like you said, I never thought that I would see a Forest game as like appointment viewing, but I have been this season. They've played well. They played disciplined, and it's been an enjoyable watch. So I for my part, I hope they end up in a Champions League spot. They've historically won the Champions League before. Obviously, it was a long time ago. I think when Brian Clough was the manager. And honestly, they endeared themselves to me when they were playing City in one of the cups, I think, and they chanted to the City fans, "Champions of Europe, you'll never sing that." And then the City fans chanted back. Obviously, this is before City won the Champions League. City fans chanted back, "Champions of Europe, you weren't even born. You weren't even born. Champions of Europe, you weren't even born." So then the Nottingham fans hit back again, and we're like, "You won't be alive. You won't be alive. Champions of Europe, you won't be alive." And I just think that kind of banter is great. So good for them, you know, flexing a bit of history on on Manchester City. And it would be even funnier if City did fall out of the Champions League and they kind of took their spot, I guess. And for what it's worth, they've won the European Cup twice. They won it back to back, something that Manchester City has never done. So, who really is the small club? These are the questions we'll leave you with. So that was a good 56-minute cooking sesh on the state of the Premier League. There's a lot of games this weekend. Obviously, as we always say, we're going to try to be consistent. We'll probably talk about the results that jump out at us. Obviously, depending on how that Spurs United game go, that might be one that we highlight. City Newcastle also has a lot of narrative around it. So I think those are the two that I'm looking at the most and being like, yeah, those will probably be stuff that has to be discussed depending on how results go and how the teams look. We are going to also record another episode right after this about Real Madrid and more of the Champions League stuff. So you'll definitely hear about Real Madrid and some more City backlash. We didn't really go into City too much this time. We were hating more on.
We're gonna go in.
We were hating more on the other side of Manchester and Spurs for a lot of this. But yeah, we'll see you soon. Stay tuned. We thank you for your support, obviously, and yeah, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, follow us on everything to stay up to date. And yeah, we appreciate you and thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.